I'll really tell you where I started and how bad I was and really what it took to get really good at networking for me personally. It took me almost 15 years to get really good at it. English, if you don't know, is my second language. I'm naturally quite shy. I am very much an introvert. And again, I really had no idea what to do and how to do it. And that was so painful because I remember I was so awkward and I would think in advance what I was going to say, but I honestly was so bad at it. I grew to a six-figure corporate career where I quite literally was headhunted to do this for a living. Now, it doesn't mean you need to take 12 years or 15 years in order to learn how to do this. You can learn this. Hello, my friends. I am so excited to be back with another episode of the Career Dive podcast. As you might have noticed, we took a break for a few weeks. There was a lot going on in the best way possible on the background. First, we have completely reimagined what my coaching program, my A to Z job search coaching program, the Star Canada program is like. We have moved to a new platform. So now you have pretty much daily accountability and support and coaching. We've added a lot more one-on-one support, and we've really been elevating your experience in the program because I have been over the last year or so really obsessing with this idea of how do we help you move faster? How do we help you get your dream offer even faster within the program? And the results speak for themselves. I was actually right before recording this episode. I've been looking back over the last couple of weeks where I have been celebrating my clients inside the program, recording testimonials of all the offers we've got in the last really not even month, probably 3 weeks. And when I put it all together, when I looked at our offers, it's just again in the last 3 weeks. Altogether, it's over $1 million in offers. What? That is mind blowing. And it just makes me so happy, so fulfilled. And just to give you an idea what kind of offers we've been getting over the last few weeks, we got a PM, so project manager offer in tech in Canada. We got an offer in urban planning with the UN in Europe. And that was a dream offer, dream city. Alan is very happy. Our client in the Start Canada program, we just got a customer success offer in tech again in New York City. And this is for someone who is transitioning from aerospace, from a very technical role. And her dream was to transition to tech, to move to New York City. And all of that is happening with this role. Plus, she is getting over 10% more than she was paid before. So she was so happy. What else? We have senior sales role with SAP. We have a developer role in tech with over 135K in compensation for that one. We have again another dream offer. And when I say dream offer, those are the words that my clients are using when they get those offers. So that's why I say that. We have another dream offer where Stephanie, again, got clarity in the program around what she actually wanted. She narrowed it down to luxury, hotel, big chains. She got into Marriott. She negotiated for the first time in her life and she pushed for 10K more. Again, very happy. We have a leadership offer in data analytics. We have a quality assurance offer in biopharma in Brussels. Again, that was a pivot to a new industry, 20% salary increase. All of these offers that I'm looking at over the last 3 weeks come with salary increase of 10 to 20%. And I do have to say, what I hear from all of my clients right after, they are, of course, so happy with the offers that they get and more money and more interesting work and new function or new industry. Of course, they're so happy. A lot of them are moving geographically. So Dream City, for example. But what I hear time and time again is how differently they feel. And this process of learning how to job search and really elevating themselves and how they think about, again, job search and themselves has really allowed them to become so much more confident. And again, this is for me the biggest transformation that I see in you guys in the program. And what we talk about, again, inside the program every day is that this next level offer does require a next level version of you. It does require you to become more confident. It does require you to be able to speak on the spot in those tough interviews, to be concise, to be able to position yourself, to be able to handle your nerves. And that's all that you learn inside of the program on top of all of the key job searching skills. So again, combined, these offers in the last 3 weeks equal to over $1 million. What? That is just complete insanity. So excited for my clients. So I've been busy. I've been busy with our clients in the program and again, reimagining and really revamping your experience in the program. I'm also getting married. That's another very fun update. If you're not following me on Instagram, you might not know that, but I am getting married in about 6 to 7 weeks from the time I'm recording this episode. So that is something else that was taking up, or that has been rather taking up my time recently. Though I've discovered that I'm a pretty much type B kind of bride. I just kind of let it go. It's a small wedding, and our venue takes care of everything. We're getting married on a lake in a beautiful inn, and they're kind of taking care of everything. And I'm like, you know what? People know what to do. They'll show up. We'll have a great time together, and we're doing a full weekend together. That is something I really wanted to experience if we were to do a wedding, because I'm someone who can just go get married in the city hall. But if we were to do a wedding, I really wanted it to be an intimate experience where we can actually get to spend time with our most important people. So we're doing a small wedding. They're taking care of everything. I'll wear white. I like people know what to do. So I'm really being laid back when it comes to planning, but pretty fun updates on the personal end as well. With that, and now that we're all caught up, let's get into this episode. So, something we have been talking about with my clients and what really inspired this episode was this idea that growth and progress take time. And I know you might be listening and thinking, well, duh, of course they do. Yet, let's say when you are job searching, when you're looking at your career, it's absolutely normal to feel like, well, why is this not happening now? Or feeling like it's not fast enough. And something that, again, I point out to my clients over and over again is look at yourself 2 months ago and look how much progress you have made in how you show up, in how you think, in your energy, in your communication. That takes time. And your goal, again, is to go to that next level with this offer. So it probably won't happen overnight. It probably will take you some time to build up those skills, to elevate. And with that, I was reflecting on my own journey. And specifically, you guys know I talk a lot about networking, and specifically looking back at my networking journey, because it took me, when I was looking back at it, and that's what today's episode is all about. I'll really tell you where I started and how bad I was, and really what it took to get really good at networking for me personally. And it took me almost 15 years to get really good at it. Now, I didn't have really much support and resources and tools that, let's say, my clients now have when it comes to networking. So it did take me 15 years. It doesn't have to take 15 years for you, but it did take time, and it did take me getting a lot more runs and practice and reps in. It did take exposure from, first it was kind of mid-career professionals that I was meeting with, that more senior, than executives. I don't think I was ready to, let's say, network with executives day one. So it does take time. And I really want for you to see that these skills that we're talking about on this podcast, they don't develop overnight. So, without further ado, let's dive into it. My first exposure to the concept of networking was when I was at business school. Actually, probably week one or month one, they really start to drill down this idea in you that you have got a network. Like, this is how you're going to land this new offer. And what they tell you is, hey, you got to set up coffee chats. And really, that's all guidance that they gave us. And I went to one of the top business schools here in Canada, but that really was all guidance that they gave us. And just, I want to paint this picture for you. At that point, I was in my early 20s. I just moved abroad. English, if you don't know, is my second language. I am naturally, which I know a lot of people are surprised by it, I'm naturally quite shy. I am very much an introvert, and I had really no exposure to networking before. And again, I really had no idea what to do and how to do it. Go to events. We host ton of my business school hosted ton of events with different large companies. Go to events, meet people, and set up coffee chats. Use alumni, use those events to meet people and set up coffee chats. And friends, I tried. I went to pretty much all of those big events. So we would have Microsoft or Deloitte or L'Oreal come on campus with a bunch of people from that company. And there would be, let's say, hundreds of people from a business school attending. And that was so painful because I remember I was so awkward and I would think in advance what I was going to say, but I honestly was so bad at it and so awkward. And realistically, most people there were, besides a few exceptions. But honestly, those big events never led to anything because I didn't know how to approach people, especially when there's so much going on and there are, dozens of people at the same time trying to talk to that one person. At the same time, I was reaching out to people, mostly alumni from my business school, and trying to set up coffee chats. Now, alumni, especially if they're, a few years out of school within, let's say, within 10 years of business school, they're pretty typically responsive because they know what it's like, they remember it. And even if your messaging is off, I felt like I was getting a lot of responses, or quite a bit, I would say. And I was honestly reaching out a lot because, again, I was told this is what you need to do. So I would set up actually a lot of coffee chats. And fun fact, this is how I started drinking coffee. Before business school, I didn't drink coffee at all, but all of these chats were at coffee shops. And everyone was ordering coffee, and I was thinking, "I guess I'll have a coffee as well." And I went from drinking 0 coffee back then to multiple coffees a day, which I don't do anymore, but, that's just a fun side note. So, I would have those conversations, and I would try like, I would do research, I would think of questions to ask, but once again, I was nervous. I was really young. I was kind of shy. I was so nervous that I thought I would forget English, that I would forget how to ask or say what I wanted to say. But the biggest challenge was that I had no idea how to proactively turn those nice chats, or somewhat nice chats because I wasn't really good at it, but those chats into anything else. I had no idea how to ask for those next steps. And because I had a lot of those coffee chats, even though they were not really good, people were just from the sheer volume of it, some people were very helpful and they would introduce me to more people. And that actually did lead to a few interviews. So that was my first taste of networking. And I remember thinking, I don't really enjoy this that much, but I can see that this works. I can see that this is on the background how people get interviews and opportunities. So I saw a lot of potential in it. I just wasn't really good at it, and no one was there to teach me how to be good at it. My next chapter my next chapter was me getting into my first job after business school, and that was me in the CPA world, in the accounting world. Some of you know this path already. I was working with the Big 4 firms, and something I believe life changing for me happened in that job without me realizing, and or me realizing back then. In that role, I had to go to multiple networking events every single week. On top of that, my job also required me to meet people. So, some of the events, let's say that CPA as the organization put together, had speakers. And I was actually in charge of finding those speakers, figuring out what they were going to talk about, and kind of setting the theme for the event. So, speakers meant they had to be pretty accomplished, interesting senior professionals, again, in the CPA accounting world. And that meant that I had to meet them. I had to set up a conversation with them and invite them to speak at this event. So that really pushed me to start meeting people every week. I would have multiple of those coffee chats. So for 3 years, I want for you to really hear this. For 3 years, when I was at CPA, I think I was there maybe for 3.5 years, but I went to at least one, typically a couple, networking events every single week. I'm not exaggerating. And I would have multiple coffee chats every single week. I would always look at my week ahead to make sure that I have those on my calendar. That quite literally was part of my job. Now, was it easy in the beginning? Because I just told you where I was coming from. No. But because I had to do both of those things, events and coffee chats, I over time was just getting better at it. I was just getting more comfortable. And because they were always around kind of the same topic, because they were connected to my job, it was just becoming easier and easier because a lot of the conversations that I was having were around the same topics, and I was learning more and more about those topics. So I was just getting more comfortable having them. And I got so good over time. I started noticing, I was like, I'm actually kind of enjoying this. And this is actually kind of fun for me. And when I knew that, I'm actually pretty getting pretty good at this, was I was at one of the networking events with, again, the CPA, and I just started chatting with someone who was standing next to me. And because, again, that was a habit that I was developing, was just getting comfortable speaking to people. And I started a conversation with this gentleman next to me. And we were, again, just kind of small talk a little bit, but I started the conversation. I initiated it. And he was asking me a few questions about me and what I do and what kind of brought me to this event. And then he goes, I know you are within the CPA world and you are not in recruitment. I was connected to recruitment because those events and networking events were connected to a recruitment for the CPA profession for the Big Four, but I was not a recruiter. I didn't have jobs. And he said, I just can see that you'll be really good in recruitment. And turned out he was a director at Robert Half, which is one of the biggest recruitment firms in the world. And he said, let's just set up a chat, have a lunch, talk through what it's like to work in recruitment and see if this can be a fit. And I remember walking out of that event and thinking, I think I'm onto something. So I actually did meet with him, had a lunch with him, and he right after lunch said, "Hey, our office is right next door. Do you want to come in, meet the team? I'll show you kind of what it looks like." And I actually over time, I actually explored getting into recruitment at that point. I reached out. By the way, we talk about this often on the podcast, using networking to validate whether this career choice and next step is right for you. So that's exactly what I did. I said, "Listen, this is interesting. Let me do some research here." So I did what I always do and what I tell you guys to do. I met with a couple of people who are recruiters and asked them about what they actually do, what they like about it, what they don't like about it. And I learned then that, okay, I don't actually want to be a recruiter, even though this is kind of interesting and cool. So that was me kind of starting to get better at it, honestly, just from doing it more and more and more. Now, the next chapter from there, some of you already know, was me moving away from the accounting world into consumer goods. And some of you know, I went on this journey, really digging deeper into what's right for me, what makes me feel excited. And my next chapter was really now that I knew, okay, I feel like I know how to do this, was okay, I want to move cities and I want to transition industries. I know this will require a lot of networking. So I've shared this story before, but if you haven't heard it, here it is. So I lived in Vancouver at that point and I wanted to move to Toronto. So I set up about a couple dozen probably coffee chats in person in Toronto. It took me a couple of months of reach outs to put that all together. And then I took a week off work. I went to Toronto and I had all of those coffee chats. Now, again, at this point, it's probably what 4 or 5 years from when I started this journey in my business school. And I essentially that week in Toronto, I spent the whole week talking to people. I went from one meeting to another, to another, to another. I like put on a blazer in the morning and kind of almost like went to work. And I felt so much more comfortable because by that point, I would have had, I don't know, probably 100 conversations with quite senior professionals in my role within the CPA world. So I've had a lot of those conversations. And this was a lot more natural to me. And really, I didn't have to think of, what were going to be the specific questions that I'm going to ask and how I'm going to ask them. I already had that. I just would think, I would do some research. I would think about some of the themes around what I want to discover here and why I'm doing this meeting. But that's kind of where I would leave it in terms of my prep. And I've shared again the story before, but that trip immediately led to multiple interviews. On the spot, the person in front of me, for example, a director at actually, fun fact, I was once again revisiting recruitment at an executive search firm that I sat down with, said, "Hey, listen, I really like you. We're not hiring right now, but there's this role that we've been considering bringing someone on. It's not a recruitment role," which I told her, "Hey, I don't actually want to be a recruiter, but there's something about this world that I just continue to come back to." So that's what she told me. "Hey, we have this role that's more kind of relationship management with our like top executives." I'm like, "That's exactly like I've been really enjoying this." Anyway, so that led to an interview right then and there. And I had 2 rounds of interviews while I was still in Toronto. So I really started seeing how for my own career, this is the skill. But I was also seeing that it didn't happen overnight and this confidence that I now had and the ease that I had and how again, it didn't feel awkward. I didn't feel shy anymore. I really felt like a peer in that conversation with someone very senior. That really took me some time and again, a lot of reps to develop. All right. Next chapter from there is I moved to Toronto and I get into consumer products. And as you probably already know, I loved in the beginning, love that job. And I was the person in between the big retailers. So I was selling to Nordstrom and Anthropologie, Bloomingdale's, Barney's, and our design team. So we were designing private collections for those type of buyers. But what you might not know is that a big part of my job was actually finding new ways, new customers, new buyers, new ways to increase our sales. So that meant that I needed more contacts. So let's say Nordstrom is a large organization and the only buyer that, I met because my company already had those contacts was just one person within one category. So let's say she was buying for kids, like kids apparel. But our products were also applicable for other categories. And for that, you need a new buyer. So my job now once again required finding people. And again, buyers, for example, as with actually really most industries, are quite hard to find. It's not that they just have, a posting on Nordstrom's website, here are all of our buyers, and this is what they buy for. Absolutely not. It took a lot of knocking on doors, a lot of cold calling, cold emailing, sending out samples, guessing emails. it really took a lot of work to even find out who the right person is. And I actually want to pause here for a second because I know this comes up for my clients quite often when they say, "Oh, but I'm not exactly sure who the right person here is, who the hiring manager is." And I say, "Yes, in a lot of cases, it's not exactly obvious who is the right person you need to talk to or the team, 2, 3 people you need to talk to." And this is just for you to hear that oftentimes it took a lot of knocking on doors and a lot of side conversations to even get the name of the person I needed to meet with. So again, I was really developing and honing this skill of not just having conversations, but how do you even find the right person and how do you get them to meet with you? So, and actually, interestingly enough, some of those people, took a few weeks to find, and some people took months and months to find. I even came up with these scripts that we use to actually call like the head office, let's say at Nordstrom, and ask some question. And they wouldn't just tell you, "Hey, here's the name of this person," but I would talk to them about how I wanted to invite them to an event, and I had my ways to find the right person. And again, if you're thinking, "Oh, just go to LinkedIn," again, oftentimes it's just not very obvious on LinkedIn who the right person is. So from there, once I found out the name, then again, I needed for that person to meet with me. And as you can imagine, if you are, let's say, a buyer at Nordstrom, you have hundreds of brands, if not more than hundreds, reaching out to you over and over and over again because everyone wants to be sold at a large retailer, or a lot of brands want to. So it is not easy to get that meeting. Again, it's a lot of the right messaging. It's a lot of emailing, cold calling, going to events where that person can be, trying to find an introduction, following up. Again, that really made me creative, to be honest, with my ways of how do I get this person to respond to me? Not even to book a meeting with them. How do I get them to even know who I am and my name and to say, to hit respond to my message? So that really kind of took my networking skills to the next level. All right. And then the next chapter of my networking journey, as some of you know, was transitioning away from consumer goods to recruitment sales. So, in recruitment sales, I don't know if I've ever talked on the podcast in depth what recruitment sales actually are, but I mentioned earlier in this episode that I always was drawn to recruitment and hiring. I just find it so motivating, and I truly believe it's, life-changing for people. I just always knew based on, again, my research and due diligence and talking to real humans in real jobs, I knew that I didn't want to be a recruiter myself, but I loved the industry. So at this point, we are, what, 10 years into my career after business school. So at this point, I have been really honing in this skill of finding the right people, getting them to respond to me, getting them to meet with me, and then leading that meeting strategically so that after that buyer from Nordstrom meets with me, they actually want to work with me. Because once again, think about it this way, they meet with a lot of people, they look at a lot of brands, but they don't just buy the brand. They buy the relationship. They buy from me and not from someone else because they just really enjoy this contact realistically, because they can just buy something honestly pretty similar from someone else. Like where it's not necessarily groundbreaking. There are a lot of competitors when it comes to consumer products. So at this point, it's been over a decade of me really honing on these skills, both as a job seeker and in my professional life. And again, I was getting really good at it and I was really enjoying it. And I was kind of looking at, finding people, getting them to respond to me, booking that meeting. I was looking at it as a game. And I was always thinking, okay, what else? What else can we do? What else can I say? How else can I reach out? Who else can help me to get in front of this person? And again, I always gamified this for myself. So at this point, as you might know my story, I am again looking at recruitment as the industry. And then I actually learned that, oh, in recruitment, within large organizations in recruitment, there is, or large agencies, there is this function of recruitment sales where you're not the one hunting for candidates, but you're hunting for clients. And that's when I knew, ooh, okay, I feel like this is a perfect mixture of skills that I really, really enjoy. And it's connected to this kind of cause that I really am interested in. So that was a really, really good fit for me. Now, with this next chapter, I was actually headhunted for this role in recruitment sales. I was paid six figures. So I was paid really, really well, actually, in that role. And in recruitment sales, what you do is you go into large organizations. So, for example, some of my targets were Royal Bank of Canada, Bank of Montreal. So, biggest banks in the country, 40,000 employees. So they're pretty big. And my goal was to find big upcoming projects that will require for the bank to hire new people. And I wanted to be the one that they hire from. So my team of recruiters would search for those candidates, but I am the one who brings in that relationship. So my job, quite literally, was to find those senior, and I would always target kind of director, VP, EVP level executives. My goal was to, and again, they have no idea who I am. My goal was to find them, get them to book a meeting with me, get them to actually have and sit down and have a conversation with me, to be able to also speak their language. I'm not in finance, but at that point, I could have an hour-long conversation about, new Basel regulations that were coming out, or AML or market risk. I could really have an in-depth conversation about that because before meeting with anyone that's senior who actually has the power, hear this, right? Who has the power to say, hey, we need to hire, we need help here. So these are the people we always want to target. Um, Before having those really high level conversations and senior conversations, I needed to do my research. I needed to know what's going on, what are the challenges, what are the projects, what's coming down the pipeline, so that when I meet with someone so senior, I already have all of that information and I'm coming in, and I want for you to hear this, I'm coming into that networking conversation still with a lot of curiosity and really listening to them. But in my head, I know that I'm the solution that they need. So that really challenged me to take my networking skills to this next level because the subject matter was quite complex and not something I am a specialist in. I was meeting very senior folks that are very busy, and it's really hard to get a meeting with them. They knew when I reached out, they knew that I was in sales because that's my title. They knew realistically why I was reaching out. So they would have objections and they would say, oh, we already have that figured out. We already have a talent team, or we already work with an agency, or we're not hiring right now. So when you are networking and you're hearing that, that's completely normal. But I also had to learn, okay, how do I overcome those objections so that they still meet with me and they like me in that meeting? So once again, same with the buyers before at Nordstrom, now at Bank of Montreal, I needed for them to also like me, which again, over the last, you know, decade, I've been learning how to get people to really like me in that meeting. So, what I want for you to hear today is that it doesn't happen overnight. This skill that I'm now really, really good at took me over a decade to develop, to tweak, and I'm still learning how to do it better because I don't think there is an end point to it. But I did start as, again, an introvert, someone abroad, speaking a foreign language, naturally quite shy, and someone who had no idea how to do this. And I grew to a six-figure corporate career where I quite literally was headhunted to do this for a living. And I was really, really good at it. In the first month in recruitment sales, my manager told me that whoa. And again, I had very, specific sales targets in that role. And he said, hey, I've never seen anyone do so well in their first month in this job. And I've been at this for 20 years. So I was really good at it, but it wasn't a fluke. It wasn't something I was just naturally good at. It was a lot of reps. It was a lot of meetings and a lot of trial and error. Now, it doesn't mean you need to take 12 years or 15 years in order to learn how to do this. You can learn this in a couple of months. That's what I teach my clients in the Start Canada program. That's what, in kind of a very do-it-yourself way, I teach inside Network Like a Pro. But in the Start Canada program, you actually get a lot of feedback on what you're doing. So you're out there networking, but then you come back and then we debrief together and I help you to tweak your strategy or tweak your messaging so that you're not just kind of trying to do this the way I did it on your own, but you have that support and you could actually go a lot faster. And the feedback that I get from my clients every single time is, whoa, okay, this is insane. I wasn't comfortable about doing this when I started. Now I know how to do it, what to say, how to approach people, how to ask for next steps in the right way. So at the same time, it doesn't take them a day to figure this out once they learn all the foundations inside the program. It still takes them time and reps to get really good at it. So this is my story of how I got really good at networking. And I've actually now brought these same skills and same tools and strategies into my new career as an entrepreneur, as a coach. As some of you know, I have a contract with LinkedIn Learning. I have 2 courses with LinkedIn. I recently went to New York to record a podcast episode with LinkedIn News with their podcast in LinkedIn's office in Empire State Building, which was a really cool experience. Just went live. LinkedIn News has over 18 million subscribers. So this isn't something that, again, was a fluke. It was something strategic that I had on my mind for a couple of years. And I knew, okay, this is the same game. Who do I need to know? Who needs to know me? Who do I need to meet? Who are those people? Okay, how do I make sure that when I meet them, I'm prepared? Similar to how I was approaching those senior executives. First, I needed to talk to a few other people so that I'm prepared for that key meeting. Same here with LinkedIn. That's how those opportunities came about for me. It wasn't a fluke. They didn't just reach out to me. It was through introductions, A, and B, through me proactively reaching out to the right people after those introductions were made, because introductions are not enough. So I hope that this episode inspired you to maybe look at networking differently. And if you are someone who is thinking, I don't think this is for me, I'm just not a natural networker, I was not either. I hope that this episode inspired you to start taking action and start getting those reps in. And maybe this episode also inspired you to get help so that you don't have to take a decade to learn this on your own. And also, my job pushed me to actually do and take a lot of those reps. If you are not in a job that pushes you to do that, it's actually really hard to push yourself to get as many reps as I did to learn. So that's why a lot of people don't end up learning, because they try a couple of times on their own. They're like, this is really bad. So whether you do those reps on your own, whether you do those reps with some sort of support, I'd love to help you on your journey. And I really, really push you and challenge you to, right after listening to this episode, think about, if I were to start today, where would that be? Who are, let's say, the 3 people that I can reach out to today? Maybe they're the people that you know already: old coworkers, old boss, old vendors, old clients. Maybe just for a catch-up conversation to, I call it, to start building your networking muscle and start getting used to it and start getting kind of into the groove of, okay, this is something that I will continue doing as my ongoing practice. All right, friends, this is it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed this episode, kind of diving into a little bit more of my personal story and my personal journey. And I cannot wait to see you in the next episode. Bye for now.